君が好きだ。
What's up, everyone? Welcome to 3 out of 10 Anime Fans. Recommend you check out this podcast if you ever get reincarnated into another world, aka 3 out of 10 Anime. This show is all about having fun conversations to rank anime based on a standard set of criteria so they can be compared, contrasted, and recommended. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We discuss a different show or movie each week, so whether you're a seasoned weeb or new to the genre, we know you'll have a good time. Here's our agenda for each episode. First, we give our first impressions of the show in one sentence. Then we use that to launch into our personal enjoyment section, which is a personal scale of 1 to 10 of how much we liked watching the show and how much we enjoyed it. Then we go into our technical assessment, which is again a scale of 1 to 10 that we create using a collective rubric to try and agree on 4 different categories to give it an overall scale of 1 to 10. Then at the end, we give our comparisons and recommendations to other shows that you should watch and announce what we are doing in the next episode. I'm Brett.
I'm Skyler.
And I'm Braydn.
We are your hosts from the United States. We each has varying opinions, tastes, and backgrounds, which should result in some interesting and relatable dialogue, no matter who you are. We're grateful you're joining us for our discussion about this week's episode, To Your Eternity, an adventure anime on Crunchyroll. We're covering all 20 episodes, so spoiler warning, expect spoilers. If you don't want them, go watch the show, come back. Also, mature content notification for this show, just as a heads up. Without further ado, how would you guys describe your first impressions of To Your Eternity in one sentence?
You want to hit us off, Brett? You got one
Yes,
in the bucket? Go
I
for
do. I do, and I will start us off.
Good.
Okay, my one sentence. A show that was so dang good. It made me yell out loud, crying on a crowded airplane, and have everyone around me turn and stare at me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that's my one sentence.
Yeah, which goes pretty well into mine, so I'll go next. To Your Eternity is honestly a show that knows how to like push your sad button and really honestly abused me with it a little bit. I was real sad after this show. This is a real sad show.
Skyler, what about you?
A lifeless orb that sucks the souls of its dead companions to try and grow.
Okay, so it's clear to tell me and Braydn really like the show, but Skyler, what would you give this show for an enjoyment ranking?
Okay, so I think I gave this one a 6.5.
Yep. Yes, you did.
Yeah, I gave this one a 6.5. And so for me, a 6 is an okay show. I generally liked the show, but it has many problems, or there are things about it that severely detracted from my experience. And
All right.
for me, it was just, I checked out emotionally early from this show. So,
That's
Gotcha.
good. Put you safe in a safe place.
well,
Gotcha.
yeah, when you establish a pattern, it's just like, oh, this is this kind of show? Okay, bye.
Gotcha. Braydn, what about you?
I gave this one an 8 out of 10, which honestly it was waffling between an 8 and like a 9 or 10 for me. But stink, man, that last arc killed it for me.
Well,
Like
what's a
No,
7 show for you?
Yeah. No. Like an 8 show for me, or it's one that's notably does some incredible things or things that I find admirable, but there's some strong things that detract from it. Like I'm saying, that last arc, that's what hit it off for me. It's like this could have been a better show if not for the last arc. 100%.
Gotcha. All right, for me, I gave To Your Eternity a 10. For me, a 10 is a show that I enjoyed as much as any other show I've ever seen. And again, to go back to my one sentence, if a show can make me audibly emote in a crowded space where you normally should not do that, then it's really got something special going for me. So I gave it a 10. And I'd like to start kind of our discussion on why I gave it a 10. Why did I like it so much, if I could? So for me, it started, like, it all starts by covering the basics, right? So for me, the plot, music, characters, world building, pacing, animation, humor, storytelling, like, all that stuff was covered for me. Except for a couple minor things, like, I'll give a caveat to my 10. I loved this show so much, but the second arc is what carried it super heavy. The first arc was good. It was really good. The second arc was unbelievably good.
You're talking about the Gugu arc.
Talking about the Gugu arc,
Yep.
which, oh man. But then the third arc, as you mentioned, Braydn, and Skyler, as you'll probably talk about as well, it definitely fell short. So I'm not saying that, like, the third arc, like, here's what I'm saying. This show had some shortcomings for me. Did not like the third arc. Did not like the stupid owl. Did not like the creepiness of the villain. In the sexual creepiness of the villain.
Oh, that villain. You're not talking about the knockers. You're talking about Hayase.
Specifically, yes. Specifically Hayase's, like, sexual motivation. That, not a fan of. But I loved all the other stuff so much that I was willing to overlook it. So, like, all the basics were covered, but I think this show really excelled in a couple key areas, and I'm just going to bring up one of them because we already mentioned it. For me, the Gugu arc was amazing.
It's amazing.
The romance story was so good. The emotional pain you feel when... So here's the moment. I'll stop talking after this because I want to hear what you guys think. But the moment that made me yell in the airplane. So I was watching the Gugu arc, and the moment where Fushi takes over Gugu's body, right? And then you have Rin running into the building, right, into the house to see Gugu because she thinks he's alive. Fushi turns into Gugu, and I literally, like, slapped my face with my hands, and I was like, "No, what are you doing?" And I said that out loud, and that's when everyone turned and looked at me, but I didn't care. I was like, "What are you doing? Why would you do that? No." And then they have their interaction, and it's like, he's lying to her, and she's like, and I'm like, "No, he's dead. Why would you do that? You're so dumb. Why?" And then, like, I'm sitting there just in, like, emotional, I'm just distraught. And then the episode ends by her laying in the flowers, and she's like, "Oh, I know he's gone." And I was like, "She knows he's dead. She knows he's gone." I was like, and that's when I started crying. And yeah, like, so the way that this show really just, like, pulled me in emotionally was so powerful. And I think the thing they did with Gugu's arc that no other show really has done successfully for me, and this is where I want to call it out. Most of the time, when anime wants you to pity a character, they just show you a sad backstory and then justify the things that they do, and then, like, you're off and on your way. And so I'm kind of calloused to that. I don't know how many shows we've watched in Anime Club recently where I'm like, what show was it specifically where I was like, "Oh, she had a hard life, she had no redeeming qualities whatsoever."
To Your Eternity, right?
No, Ranking of Kings. It was
Ranking of
Kings.
I meant Ranking of Kings. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Moranjo. It's like, "Oh, you should feel bad for her. Her hands got cut off as a kid. You should feel bad for her." But with Gugu, like, they told his story in such a way, and they took their time, and they justified it, and they kept you going with him. Like, I don't like getting emotionally attached to side characters because I prefer the main characters, but the way they did it was so good that, like, man. Okay,
True.
I've
Okay,
talked way
I got-
too long.
Okay,
Go ahead.
but Brett,
Go
I
ahead.
got some ideas on top here. So I think I figured out how they did it. I've been trying to figure out their ridiculously, abusively sad formula they have, and I think I figured it out because I rewatched this show again just this last week, and I rewatched it again with my roommate just earlier today a little bit, and I think I figured it out. They're taking an anime trope, and they are making characters die with it. The indomitable trait that a lot of what's the called, like stick of One Piece and
Shonen.
yeah, this shonen. So those characters that like can never be deterred from their ambitions and they are unstoppable. They took that trait and then they killed those characters over and over again because March wanted to be an adult and wanted to learn things and wanted to teach people how to, like, you know, that she want to have a family. Gugu, he was gonna like press on and be his best self no matter what alcohol's put in his belly, how ugly his stupid face is. He was gonna be his best self. And then Tanari in the last arc, this is where they tried. She wanted to lead the pirates or make a better world for children everywhere. But then even Fushi himself, he was not gonna accept by any means that his tribe was dead, that there wasn't a mountain, that he could make it to this happiness that he's been yearning for. Fushi reached towards that his entire life and then died sitting up in his chair. That character, that is a Shonen character trait that they murdered. They murdered those characters over and over and over again.
And that's the other thing I love about this show so much is there was very little convenience in this show. And you genuinely worried that Fushi was going to lose. He didn't have main character plot armor. He really didn't. Like, he lost multiple times. He took big L's all along the way. Like, the Oniguma, the bear, got stolen from him multiple times. Like, he got down to, like, having only March left on multiple occasions.
He was reduced to his stone state.
Yeah.
At least once.
Yeah. True.
Oh, I want to toss in really quick. I earlier said that Fushi was the one who thought he could make it to the mountain. No, that Fushi's the name of our main character. I don't remember the name of the Alaskan boy character or the Arctic boy character who he takes his form of. But that's the main form of our main character the rest of the show. So never mind. That's my mistake.
But yeah, there wasn't a lot of convenience. Like, and to the point where even though it was a pattern that they followed of introduce side character, get to know them, like them, they die. Even though it was a pattern that they had, it gave weight to the show where every other show, like, pick another show, right? My Hero Academia. Who is ever actually in danger? No one, because something's going to happen and someone's going to save them and some power is going to suddenly show up, or, you know, like, there's just so much, like,
they're going to go to 1,000% or something.
Yeah,
you know?
like, I call it the Dragon Ball Z effect. Like, everyone has a name for it. It's like oh, I'm not strong enough, I'll just want it more.
Our
like
drill
the
will pierce the
freaking
heavens.
Skate the Infinity we just watched. I'm about to lose, I'll just have more fun. Like, but this show didn't do that. Like, characters died. And even though even though Fushi became them, like, they were dead. And the relationships that they had with other people ended. And it left you feeling sad. Like, there was so much.
And some of these fools died in the worst way imaginable. Man, the knockers are nasty.
Yeah.
The big, like, parasitic arc villain thing is gross. Like, it's disturbing to watch it move and attack. Which is cool for animation, I think.
And I was even with the third arc, we've talked about it having weaknesses.
Yes.
I was surprised when it was like Uroi was there, and he was like,
Dude.
yeah, he's like, don't worry, Mia, like, let's freaking, like, let's hold him off and then go out as heroes and kill ourselves. Like, holy fetch. Like, that was, even though that was the arc I cared the least about, and those side characters were the ones I cared the least about, I still was like,
that was still a really cool
dang,
moment.
that's pretty, yikes. Okay, but we've just been like going on and on. Skyler, what are some of your thoughts? Because there were some things you didn't enjoy about the show.
Or did, or whatever. What are your thoughts?
So, this is something that I kind of mentioned earlier, but just from the first episode, they set the pattern that the entire rest of the season, the rest of the series is going to follow. Which is just, oh, you get close to this person and then they die. Chasing something that they want. And so that's why, you know, I pretty much disconnected from the entire series. Like, even with the March arc was what solidified that pattern. And so,
what about that pattern do you not like, other than like an isekai pattern, which is,
well,
I want something and I get it no matter what because I am invincible.
The issue is that it's intentional. Like, I would say that this is intentionally a tragedy, because, like I said, they die reaching for something they want. That means they never get it. And so every character that you will encounter, again, this is only with this series. I haven't read the manga, so I don't know. But every character you follow, they're not going to get what they want. They are going to die before they get it. And Fushi, or our main character, I don't care for him. I don't like him.
What about him didn't you like?
So, two things. Number one, he is my least favorite type of character, which is a passive character. He never really does anything of himself. It's always the characters around him that pushes him or drives him to go and do something else. And so, to me, he exists. He's there. He doesn't do anything of himself. He only reacts or does something because someone around him pushes him to do so. And I hate that kind of character.
Okay. It's interesting because it does well describe our main boy, who gets named Fushi by Marsh, as being more of a passive, wanting character, except for, like, I don't know. I was led into this passive character in a way that I appreciated with this one.
Yeah, because I normally hate that too. I actually agree with you, Skyler. I very much don't like those kind of characters normally. And I'm not saying that you should like this one. I'm just saying that for me, like, what did it for me, I think, is that the way that Fushi was so dynamic, despite the fact that he was passive, is what actually carried me through. Like, for example, the first couple episodes, he can't even speak. Like, he can barely drink water, right? And then a few episodes later, he's learned a couple words. Like, he doesn't even get to become like a fluent speaking person until like halfway through the show, which to me was really cool. Like, he evolved over the course of the entire show to the point where even in the last episode, the final scene where you see him in this very flash forward, now he's like a young adult, like he was constantly changing, progressing, learning, so that even though he was passive a lot of the time, he was still growing, which most passive characters don't do. So I think that's for me what did it. Braydn, what did it for you?
I was gonna note the first character decision moment he had as a character was not until like episode 4 or 5. But he'd been like following on Marsh because Marsh could get him food and he couldn't feed himself. And he decides to protect Marsh. That's his first like conceptual strong intention that he follows through on, is he defends Marsh from Oniguma, the big bear monster thing. And so I think it like this, like, for whatever reason, I keyed into like allowing this character to like make small but impactful decisions now and again. And I guess the pattern set me up for that. I don't know. It's like, I guess it also, like, by the point he actually starts speaking, we've had 2 arcs of characters speaking for him or speaking or leading the narrative or being invested in their lives. So he almost doesn't really become much of a character or main character even until he can like start talking to the beholder or the gray thing or whatever he calls them. the hooded figure that birthed him, or his dad or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And remind me on, this was in the first episode, but he said
Yes.
why he created Fushi essentially.
Yes.
And wasn't it to like just like absorb a little bit of everything to prevent it from destruction or something like that?
Yep. Yeah, that's there might be different words, but that's what it is. Yes.
And then through the show, you learn more about that motive of the beholder for creating him.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I just did not like Fushi. And again,
Yeah.
where I checked out emotionally, like the whole Gugu arc, they writ that really well. But again,
Okay.
just where they were pushing it is just like, I was just shaking my head during that whole like last episode of that, because it's like, yep, you're doing this. Yep, you're doing this. And it didn't have the same impact because, again, I had emotionally checked out.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
gotcha.
I cut onto something with the Gugu arc that I was very that made me upset a little bit, actually. Besides, like,
Yeah.
being emotionally distraught with the moment,
Oh,
because that hit me 2 times. Both times I watched it, I've cried. But just like the drenches, dude. Like, my eyes are just bawling. Like, I was playing Elden Ring on my side computer while watching it this last time, and I just like listened to it. I'm like, kill the monster, I guess. I don't know what's life anymore. That Gugu.
Right.
Anyway, but like as soon as Gugu gets his helmet, and he is given that he has alcohol in his stomach, like, oh my goodness, we're just setting this guy up to be a Ben 10 ability for our stinking Fushi, aren't we? Like, he's gonna be the fire breathing form of stinking Gugu, and then he grows up, and then he's like ripped. Like, okay, well, he's now just straight up food for Fushi, no matter what my emotions say.
Yes, I do agree with that. However, I would propose that they did it really well, because when Fushi used Gugu's form, he lost the majority of the time. Gugu was not this super strong character. In fact, he won one time when he was in Gugu's form, and then he lost every other time after that. Like, it was not he's now got this super powerful whatever, and that's one of the things I liked.
That's true.
He was
That's
not
true.
OP at all, even with Gugu's helmet and muscles. Not the
I
case.
was gonna say that as soon as I realized that, it's still like the character Gugu and the character Rian, his like love interest, or that was Rian was love interest for Fushi, or whatever that little fun little triangle was, that little social kid circle, whatever. They still swept me in with the story. Like, soon after I realized that, it didn't take me out of the moment when it happened. I was just like more upset that it did
Yeah.
when it did. Ugh. Oh, and Rian, what a character. What a good character to bounce off of.
Yeah.
Her whole like tragedy of getting a scratch on her arm, and it was so ugly, and she couldn't be seen in public with this little like tiny sliver scar on her arm. And what that does to Gugu, my boy, he held that in for like 5 years, not telling her that it was him. My boy, are you insane, man? I mean, maybe that's why I'm still single. I don't know.
well, and that is something that I'll get to in the technical, which is that the arcs themselves and the way that the characters were written were done well.
I agree.
Yeah,
They were.
great. Do you have a favorite
But-
arc, Skyler?
Even Hayase, the villain that I didn't really like, I think she was written super well, even though I didn't really enjoy her motive.
Yeah. Favorite arc? It would have to be the Gugu one, because yeah, I did not care about March. I just didn't care about her. The last set of kids, absolutely didn't care about them. And so Gugu, go ahead.
I have a note on the March arc, but talk about the one you liked, the Gugu arc.
Yeah, and so the Gugu arc, it just had the most going on, but at the same time, I think that's also where there's a lot of frustration from me that comes into it, particularly around Fushi. because again, where he's static and just it didn't feel like he was progressing as fast as I wanted him to. I don't know any other way to phrase that.
I would
Where
propose
it's
passive, not static. I would propose passive, not static. We can talk about it in technical, but
Yes,
he
yes,
changed.
definitely passive, not static, because there were
Yeah.
absolutely changes, but it felt like it was always so small compared to what he should have gained from something. Where, and yeah, that's what just kind of frustrated me.
But to talk for a moment about Fushi moments that took my breath away.
Mm-hmm.
In the Marsh arc, the first bigger arc. So Marsh is dead. She took that arrow for Perona. She wanted to like be an adult and help and not be assisted all the time. So she took that secret arrow, and it's so sad. And then, like the fight resolves. Perona's, who was like her sister, mother kind of character, who was watching over Marsh, like sits there kneeling and starts like holds up her dagger and starts going to kill herself. At that moment, Marsh, who's dead as a spirit, is like reaching out saying, no, absolutely not. She can't die here. And then Fushi reaches forward for her. Like this cool little thing where spirit reaches through the spirit Marsh hand and stops Perona from killing herself. Like, oh my gosh. Oh, Perona, don't do it, girl. No. Not you too, please.
Yeah. But, and then to top that off, by the way, I agree with you. That was, I really like that part as well. I think Perona was one of the best characters, personally. She was amazing. But then.
And it didn't matter.
No. It did matter. It mattered through the whole show. However, you learn at the end that Hayase killed her because Fushi can turn into Perona. And I think that was awesome. I think that was really well written and beautifully done, because everyone else did get, like, because we were following Fushi, you got to see their deaths, and you got to see multiple times throughout the show how Perona was defending what she loved, and she was progressing, and she was trying to protect people, and then ultimately, yes, she did die in the end, but you learn about it in a really different way than everybody else. Like it was still really cool.
There was a moment. They wrote it well. I agree, but I wish they had done it differently, because I thought there could have been more cool things they could have done with this. So True. Fushi's power, they say like he's able to like create things based upon stimulus. Like he says this 1,000 times.
Right.
But in the show, like through Marsh, through Gugu, he can only replicate people that have died that he's like interacted with.
People or animals,
correct. Well, I was hoping, I had this thought in the middle of it, like, oh, what if Perona's like love for Fushi for like saving him or whatever, like was strong enough to have him be able to change based on that external stimulus, love, instead of death. And like, what else things could, like, we could go to like jealousy. He could turn to things he was jealous of, or he could turn into like things he was mad at, instead of just always being death. It looks like the tempo is going to be death, and they're still using that again in a way that's given my little heart feels a nice little squeeze. Yet I was hoping for a twist there. That would have been so cool.
I'll mention a couple of things I did not like about the show, because I've been just raving about it. Yeah. So, Regard, the owl, bugged me.
Yeah,
that was the most. Owl? That was the most convenient part of the whole show. Like Uroi throws Fushi in mole form, and then he's like, "Take this where it needs to go, you inexplicably smart plot armor owl." Like that. Again, for a show that avoided convenience so well. The one thing that was so convenient was aggravating.
Was an owl.
I really hated that. And I think the reason, if I could for a second, I think the reason that the third arc was so universally a downer for everybody. Like when we had Anime Club, everyone was like, "Oh, I didn't really like the third arc." And I think
it should be said, everybody at Anime Club besides Skyler and me, I think one other person rated this a 10. Like a 10 out of a 10.
Yes.
Just like you did, Brett.
It is actually, so like in our anime club, it is actually the second highest rated show we've watched out of 40 shows and almost 1,000 episodes. To Your Eternity is our number 2 show collectively.
Yep.
So, but I think the third arc, I think there's a couple reasons why it is what everyone considered to be the worst arc. First off, it was pretty dramatically different from the rest of the show. Like, not only in tone, but in location and in justification for going there. Like, it just felt a little weird. And then the characters who we got introduced to while we were there, they were really hard to be attached to compared to March, Perona, Reen, like all these other characters. So it was also kind of out of a left field thing. Like, oh, we're on this pirate island where no one can escape. It was kind of like, what? That's kind of a little weird. So I think it was just different enough to be a little, kind of catch you off guard. And it didn't seem to fit as well. Like the March Perona arc bled so seamlessly into the Gugu arc, which was really done really, really well with the Booze Man and Piorin, which Piorin was one of my least favorite characters. But anyway.
Which, for all the characters to be like the overarching support character for Fushi, Piorin is there in literally the second episode of the entire show, and she's there through everything he does.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
She was one of the ones that was like, all right, so everybody dies that meets him, but not Piorin, I guess. She dies of old age in the last episode. And
Go ahead.
Okay. And then there's a 20-year gap between this and season 2? Are you insane? What is this story writing where we have a 20-year gap here?
Yep.
Hey, there's just nothing interesting enough for Fushi to mention for 20 years.
20 years.
I'm very curious to see what
we already had a 5-year gap, so what's 20 more?
What's 20 more, man?
The next one's going to be 100 years.
I know, we're gonna get a sci-fi mecha land at the end of all this.
So recently, on the official Twitter account, NHK confirmed that To Your Eternity will return for season 2. The announcement stated that the second season would release fall 2022.
This year, guys. It's coming. Yeah. So we might need to be doing a follow-up episode to this one here later this year. I'm not objective to it.
Oh, I was going to say, I really appreciated that, I appreciated how Piorin did eventually die, the old age part, because you got to see with dementia, and like, that was a whole aspect that I was like, wow, they're going there, and they're covering it really well. And Fushi, it was so cool because you have seen Fushi grow, not just physically, but emotionally through this whole show. And at the end, you see that he's still really immature in his ability to understand and cope with certain things. And so he deep down knows Piorin is not okay and that she's fading, but he's like in denial. He's going through like that 7 stages of grief, and he's in the denial phase for a good part of it. And then you see him go through the grieving phase and the rejection phase, and then finally he accepts it. Like, the growth of Fushi from episode 1 to the last episode, I think, was just so phenomenal because you really got to see him be dynamic. Like, I challenge anyone to show me in 20 episodes a more dynamic character. Truly. 20 episodes. That's all you got.
It would have to be a unique story because he goes from rock to human.
Yes.
So that's kind of an
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying from the moment that he took the form of a human, get rid of the rock.
Okay.
From his progression from human to where we ended in episode 20, show me a more dynamic character. I challenge you. Anyone, leave a comment. Who's a more dynamic character? Skyler, who's a more dynamic character? 20 episodes.
20 episodes?
That's the
I
challenge.
I think even in Full Metal, the first season, you go through a lot of crap. And between both Ed and Al, there's a lot of stuff happening even in the first season of Full Metal Alchemist. And that only gets deeper the longer it goes on.
That is true. However, Al and Ed are both pretty much the same people from like emotionally and how they act from the introduction to
I
them.
would say they have a lot of backstory applied to Ed now.
They
Well,
do have a
even-
lot of backstory.
But even there, that's kind of what I'm saying, where it's like you don't learn all of that backstory and all of the nuances of that backstory in the first season. The infamous Chimera episode is the one that I'm going to be
Yep.
referring to as to that major emotional upset.
Yes,
And
but
that
then
happens-
what happens the next episode?
They're attacked by Scar.
Yep, they're attacked by Scar, and they don't bring that up again for like what, 30 episodes?
Oh no, it comes up a lot.
But it doesn't like they were impacted emotionally for a couple episodes, like one or two. After that, they were pretty much back to normal.
This would be. Hold on, I don't want to. We could do this in our Full Metal Alchemist episode. We're gonna cut you guys short right there. This is an interesting challenge. I think.
Yes, 20
we can explore
episodes.
it,
So Skyler, you gave a good example, but it's more than 20 episodes. Give 20 episodes of a more dynamic character.
And I even said the first season, which I don't think is, it's either 20 episodes or even 12.
Okay.
Okay.
Noted.
Okay. All right, let's hear it. Put it in the comments. What do you think? Okay. Anything else? Quick items that you guys want to throw out. Like, didn't like.
Oh yeah, the intro sequence is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It is the most spoilery load of crap I've ever seen. It literally spoils the last episode in the intro song, in the intro sequence that gets played every episode since episode 2. Why? Why would you do your own show dirty like that? And on
Because
top of that, the
it's
songs
anime.
are no. I've never seen this before. Like even Skate to the Infinity just introduces your characters. That's all you get spoiled on. But literally, the big bad knockers like evil plan and how they go about things is in the intro sequence. And then the song's terrible. The song's not even good. It's just some dumb little hokey nonsense that's kind of soft and weird sounding. It's not even a good bop of a song. Don't skip it. Skip it every episode. I hate it.
Yeah, I will interject and say that I don't remember what it's called, but there is one anime that I came across that has an even worse intro, where not only does it start playing on either the first or second episode, but it tells you what episode certain characters are going to
No,
appear.
it
Yes.
doesn't.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Yes.
Are you serious?
Okay,
Oh.
let me give you a couple examples here. Okay,
Oh.
first off,
Gosh.
Sword Art Online Season 2, they reveal Death Gun's identity in the intro. Okay, Erased, the kind of like horror mystery anime, they reveal the murderer's identity in the intro of Erased.
To Your Eternity shows everybody who dies in the intro.
Don't do this, anime. Stop.
Let's
It's not it.
You know, Full Metal Alchemist came
Oh.
up. You know what they reveal in the intro of Full Metal Alchemist? Edward's gate breaking. In the intro of Full Metal Alchemist.
Great.
One Piece, Nico Robin joining the crew, shown in the intro.
It's true.
I'm just saying, I skip every anime intro and I never will not because I hate spoilers and it just happens.
So I mean, the One Piece one, that one's fine to me. Like that, there's gonna be characters. Especially if it's a good song. I like the One Piece song, so I'll allow that one. Like Skate the Infinity does the same thing. I really like the song for Skate the Infinity, but you can't tell me the big plot twists at every part of your show, please. So. That's our whole spiel. There it is. We've talked more about this than we ever have before. Do not
and
watch
Fairy
the
Tail.
intro.
I just
to Your
remembered
Eternity.
Fairy Tail.
You don't have to
Fairy
watch that show though. That's fine.
But the intro is super spoily for Fairy Tail. And I think Tokyo Ghoul had some too. Anyway,
So that's all I had for my rapid fire.
Okay, Skyler.
Yeah, just didn't care for the characters, emotionally disconnected very early, didn't like the main character, and so it just kind of fell flat.
Anything else from what
Wait,
you've already said?
Skyler.
Any new stuff?
Skyler.
Any new stuff?
That is more earnestly what I'm imagining with a one sentence than what you gave us at the start of the show.
Yeah.
Well, hey, the orb that absorbs the soul of his dead companions isn't a bad description.
Well, description is different than like how your personal enjoyment is in one sentence.
The ask
we
is,
can-
what
we
was your first impression of the show in one sentence?
Fair enough.
But anything new, Skyler, that you haven't brought up already?
Not really.
Okay.
I just didn't really care. I'm surprised I actually gave it a 6.5 and didn't drop it lower.
Okay.
All right. Okay, rapid fire for me. I brought it up super briefly earlier. The music was actually really good in this show. The music was really, really good in this show. I liked a lot of the core messages in the show, like caring for people with disability, the way that they approached romance, the way that they approached like family relationships. I thought a lot of that stuff was really interesting. Consistency of rules. I really appreciated how the show was super consistent, and it really never broke its own rules in any examples that I can super remember, but that's in technical, so we'll get there.
To that, I really enjoyed the moment when the dumpling balls on a stick were reproduced and they still had the nightshade on them.
Yeah,
for the first arc. That was good.
yeah,
That
that's
was good.
true. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, okay, so there you go. There's some rapid fire, and I already mentioned the things I didn't like. I'm very excited for season 2. Okay, that's personal enjoyment. Moving on to technical. So technical, the way technical works, we have 4 categories: art, story, characters, delivery. We rank each one 1 to 5, 1 being terrible, 5 being exceptional, 3 being meh. Meh for all categories is on par with what you would expect from a decent show. It doesn't stand out for being exceptionally good or bad. We always start with art. Braydn, what is 1 and 5?
Our ones, our terribles in art are where the composition is frequently ugly, messy, disjointed, bland, boring, repetitive, and poorly done. Where on the other end, our exceptional 5 shows are where the composition always is beautiful, cohesive, fitting, engaging, notable, ambitious, and expertly performed. And that's the scale we go off of. And Curry, I keep listening to our episodes. We like this do so much for us. These little Rubik things.
Yeah, our art rubric used to be a lot worse for anyone joining. So thanks for sticking through those. But this new one is a lot more specific.
Yep.
So that being said,
Yeah.
thoughts on art?
For the most part, I would say that it was good,
Yeah.
but there were many times, especially with the wolf form, with Jaune, where the animation was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. There were some janky moments.
Mm-hmm. And I was kind of hoping for more artistic like framing from this show, because in the first episode they do some cool like comic book-ish almost moments with having the characters like do a little walking through the snow, and they kind of white out all the sides. But it was only that episode as far as I remember. Most of it's just pretty standard run-of-the-mill anime stylistic.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only thing that like kind of takes it up a little bit again would be the music.
Except for the intro song.
I think the music was notable compared to other shows, but I think everything else was pretty much just standard. Like the art style was pretty standard. The sound design was pretty good, but it wasn't like exceptional. Yeah.
I really liked some of the animations regarding Perona when she fight, especially early on in the first season.
Yeah.
Like she really grows as a warrior in her sequences, and she gets to be very actionable the whole time. I thought she and how they treated her character was really cool.
You know,
But
that's actually
that doesn't really hold up with later fights. Like Besides, of course, again, the knockers being the most disturbing thing I've ever seen, where they breach and then they worm their way through and then they kill you. Oh, I hate it. It's so gross. I love that. I hate it. It's so good. So that's pretty cool.
So, are we just kind of saying it's a 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, because those moments they're few and far in between, and the music is good, but it's not anything to pull it up anything more than normal. So, good job on the music. We might give the music a little bronze medal, cute little participation trophy.
It deserves a silver medal at least.
Yeah, just a little.
It was
did it. Good
the
job.
music was really good.
The music was good.
The music was really good.
So
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Easy 3.
All right, 3. Wow, look at that. Okay,
Not much to talk about.
let's just go to story then. So, story, we have plot devices, tone/mood, continuity, world building, pacing, rules and systems, tropes. Braydn, 1 through 5.
Our terrible stories are ones where the story was frequently nonsensical, inconsistent, boring, confusing, ambiguous, unoriginal, and disappointing. While our exceptional 5 stories are where the story was always consistent, well-paced, comprehensible, consummate, on point in its mood and tone, and unique.
That last word, I'd like to focus on for just 1 second.
That unique word, that nice little
This show is very unique, truly, and I think one of the main things that makes it that really shows how unique it is when I tell someone like, hey, you should watch To Your Eternity. They're like, what kind of show is it? And I'm like, well,
you get sad.
It's it's an adventure, but you just need to watch it. And like, I've heard other people try to describe this show, and it really is it's very much kind of in its own in a lot of ways. I'm not saying it's the most unique thing in the world, but I think it's pretty unique in a lot of ways.
I'm trying to think. Because we had to do this for a little bit ago. If we take the character's story, like the character's existence and their design out of the story, and just look at the story beats and how it like transitions part to part, it still is a pretty well told story, honestly. I'm trying to think about how unique it is without the characters existing there. Like the main character goes into a town, he like meets some of the characters. The characters like they attach to him and they teach him things. And then I mean, even so, like they in the first arc, I'm thinking specifically the March arc right now. They lead he defeats the Onigama, the bear, and then they take him and his companions into a foreign town where the world like expands immensely at that point, and the companion characters are like into how the world is bigger than they thought it was, and how they were being manipulated by this other nation. You know, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning not against so much the uniqueness, because it definitely has a tempo or like has a setup that's more unique with having this orb character. Arfushi is originally an orb, like progress through things, and his like progression of life is really refreshing. Yet it's really just well written, honestly. It's really good to just see how they take what I can see is like the more classic story tale and go on from smokes, what am I trying to say? A classic story and tell it really well. Like they really built on a lot of cool stuff with the world getting bigger, with the different nations having their own clothing, with again, like you said earlier, the rules of how this world exists being consistent throughout this entire episode.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Sky?
The one thing I will note is that this one, To Your Eternity, is a character show where you are watching the show because of the characters. And so because of that, like a lot of the plot is honestly being driven by the characters and their relationships. And if you take them away, to me, it doesn't seem like there's really all that much going on. because the only conflict or story that's kind of exists outside of all the characters is essentially Fushi and the Knockers. And that is
Wait. I would change. I would say it's not Fushi and the Knockers. I
No,
would say it's the Beholder and the Knockers where the main story lives.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that is where, like, the main thread line of the story is. But there is so little time spent on that thread, at least at the moment. And so it kind of makes this story an interesting one to look at because most of these are character stories. And so it's difficult for me to try and separate characters from their story to analyze them as two different pieces.
Yeah. I think that with the point you just made, if I could go into and tie that to pacing, I think that actually what this show did really well as well is that, like you said, Skyler, the main conflict is actually between the Beholder and the Knockers, and it's actually super mysterious. For the first few episodes, you are totally in the dark. Like, no idea why this is all happening. But you learn more as you go. You learn more and more to the point where in the last couple episodes, Fushi is talking to the Beholder for like a third of each episode in the last 3 episodes. Like, it really ramps up into like that underlying kind of thing. So I actually think I really want to, I think that the show deserves a call out for the fact that it did have a super strong character driven show, but it had this underlying, conflict that it did start to grow into, to the point where in the last few episodes, it's like a big theme, and you can see that it's really going to grow into even more focus. So like, I think in that aspect, the world building and the pacing was actually done really well.
I want to make another call out for pacing, actually, while we're here, is when they needed to time skip, they did. And in a way that felt appropriate, and in a space of time that was either intriguing or, again, appropriate for the characters to live and grow and, like, become naturally the next level. Like when Gugu and them needed to become more adult, and when Fushi took that time to actually grow a beard and not change his form at all in that time, because he wanted to experience time as a human. He wanted to experience what the people he loved experienced.
Yeah.
So they allowed that pacing of years to pass. I appreciate that.
I did too.
That is something I will give them credit for, which is, I think that some stories don't time skip when they should have time skipped because they spend too much time trying to focus on something that is not relevant and does not add. And it just kind of loses and petters out because of that. But it also didn't use the time jump in a way that was confusing, jarring, or made no sense.
With the exception of the end, which was intended to be jarring.
Yes.
Well, right, but that's like, as you said, that's kind of the point, and so that's where it's a different thing. And so as long as the time jumps are used, I don't know how else to phrase it other than with respect. Even then, that's a bad way to say that. Then it's fine.
I think there's one thing that all of us should really appreciate here, and it's the episode count. 20.
20, right?
That is so weird for anime, and I'm so freaking glad it was 20. Why? Because we've talked about this a lot on the show and in Anime Club. Anime has this weird rule where you need to have 12 or 24 episodes because that's how long anime seasons are. And so many shows fall into this painful habit of being like, well, we've got to stretch this to 24. Where are we going to get 24 more episodes? Let's really pull this part of the story. And it feels unnatural and weird and bad. And this show, I don't know if they didn't do 24 for that reason, but the show didn't feel like it had anything unnecessary. It didn't feel like anything was rushed. It felt like it was exactly as long as it needed to be and not any shorter or longer. And so I think that the number of episodes being 20 is actually super commendable and very uncommon in the anime space.
So I'd like to propose a number here.
Yeah, go for it.
Not due to any like stellar like standout part, but because it's so strong as a whole, either a 4.5 or a 5 for this anime. I think this story was consistent, well-paced, comprehensible, consummate, on point in its mood and tone, and unique. It kept to what it needed to do to tell its story in a very strong and, I believe, exemplary fashion. I believe it hit it at always, if not almost always. So let's talk around that area.
I would be good with a 4.5.
I actually would too. And the reason I wouldn't give it a 5 is actually in large part due to that third story arc. I think that
Oh, yeah.
I
That's a
think
good
that
point.
third story arc is less consistent, and I think it's less consummate. It's really not quite as on point in terms of how it fits into the world and maybe how the characters progress within that third arc. So I don't think the story was as exceptional. But I actually agree with you, and Skyler. I think a 4.5. I think the show definitely deserves it.
Okay, no, that's a great point. Because actually, it's not so much that it has no outstanding things and it's just normally extremely strong. Everything but the third arc is extremely strong.
Yeah.
And that third arc, because like I was thinking about this earlier, about how Fushi, our main boy, in the third arc gets to be powerful and just get out of whatever situation he wants to be in. Like they get captured as prisoners and taken to this pirate island, but he's a prisoner for like half a second. He's immediately out of there because he can just do that now, which is kind of cool to see, but it didn't lead to anything interesting from this a story beat wise.
I would say that that's not quite true. He was still on the island because he was trying to get Piorin off the island, and he couldn't do that. And then also when the knockers showed up, he like it I actually think, okay, let me kind of gather my thoughts here into a better statement. So when we say that the third arc is weak, we are comparing it to the rest of the show, which is potentially a 5. So even if this third arc is weak, compared to a lot of other stuff, it's really freaking good. And I think the best thing that the third arc did in terms of story was it took the knockers to the next level. What do I mean by that? So the knockers this whole time were targeting Fushi's physical weaknesses, right? When he beat them as a dog, they started using plants. When he beat them, when Gugu beat them with fire, they started using rocks. And then in the third arc, even though the third arc was weak, the knockers, instead of targeting his physical weaknesses, they targeted his emotional weaknesses. They took over his friends, the people he would refuse to harm, and used those to try and kill him by taking over their bodies. Like, that gave a whole nother level to the antagonist side of the story. So I just wanted to say that, like, yes, I don't think because the third arc was weak, it deserves a 5. However, it was still pretty dang good if you look at it from a story perspective. But it definitely keeps it from being a 5. Skyler, did you have anything to add to that?
So actually, a quick note on that. That is one of the things that actually kind of annoyed me.
Oh, interesting.
About the series, is that the whole point of the knockers was that, which is that every time they come back new. They come back different. They learn from the previous mistake, and they come back trying to fix that mistake. They don't always succeed, but that's kind of the whole point of the knocker. And essentially, Fushi is supposed to be the foil to that, but it didn't feel like that all the time. If anything, it felt like he just happened to be around a character that had whatever progress Fushi should have had instead. And it was that character that got him out of that bind, not because Fushi progressed as he should have.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Anyway.
So, I mean, it sounds like...
Skyler.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that'll come up in characters next, but it sounds like we're on a 4.5.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. 4.5.
Lock her in.
Next is characters. Character design, development, motivation, action/inaction, relationships, and personality. Braydn.
Our one terrible scored characters are frequently unreasonable, confusing, inconsistent, unreasonably static dynamic, and annoying. While our exceptional 5 characters are always understandable, consistent, reasonable, adequately static dynamic, and relatable.
I'm going to add a quick note before we dive into this. There's a couple key words here that I think are important for us to clarify. When we say characters are annoying, that doesn't mean like to us in our personal enjoyment. It means that the way that that character was written is obnoxious to the progression of the story, and that reasonable and unreasonable means as that character is written, do they act consistently and reasonably given how that character is, not do we think they are a reasonable character. So a couple quick notes there, because I think that might come up in our discussion. Skyler, do you want to kick us off?
That is a good clarification, because there are some characters who are intentionally annoying, and in some ways that works.
Zenitsu.
But it doesn't work for Zenitsu.
It does not work. I think that's an example of a poorly written annoying character.
Anyways, so I would say that for that they were mostly good. I don't know. This one's going to be a bit harder for me to kind of go into on the relatable side, because from a technical side, especially in the third arc, you could tell where they were trying to essentially get their foot in the door to make you feel for those characters.
True. Agreed.
And even though they tried, again, for me, it didn't hit.
I actually agree with that. I agree with that for the third arc. That's what made it weak for me. I didn't care that much about Uroi, Miya, Upa, Sandal until they were dying. And I cared a little bit.
A little bit more. They did the death really well. They know how to make you feel those sad feels, but on that side, they didn't land with interesting characters for that arc.
Well, and this is where like the technical for the third arc especially is a little bit interesting. And I think it has to do with especially how the characters are introduced. Because essentially the way that these characters are introduced is that they're taking advantage of Fushi. You know, where they're like the con men of like, oh yeah, if you want to do this, you have to pay us. And even though you keep on trying to get away from us, we're just going to follow you around and continue doing these things. And oh, now you gave up. Now we're going to start trying to make you actually feel for us. That's not usually the order you want to do that.
And I think
it's interesting.
I think on the other thing that made the characters in the third arc so much weaker than the other ones is, and this was intentional with how the characters were written, but we talk about this a lot, their redeemable qualities were so minimal. They leaned heavier into the pity these poor children aspect of their characters, whereas with March, Perona, Gugu, they all had, even Reen, like they all had even Shin, we didn't talk about Gugu's brother at all, but man, he was a good character in the story too. And like, a painful character to watch, like the relationship between the brothers and Gugu, like refusing to, oh man, that was, whew. Anyway, but because we're talking about characters, Skyler, I'm agreeing with you by saying that
arc 3 characters.
That Shin was in the show for like 7 minutes of screen time. And
probably.
And was so powerful as a character, but they had 10 times as long of screen time for Tanari, and her reasons and motivations and things just weren't nearly as engaging and not as I don't know.
Crew, I want to say though, if I had that pirate crew in any other anime, they have a good set of motivations. They just didn't really get well applied to this story. Like,
true.
I would love having those over many other like pirate bands and other shows.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what I said, which is essentially the order by which you were introduced to these characters. The way that the flow of your character introductions went. That's where I think they went wrong in the third arc, and the characters were done poorly, actually.
Now, I have a counter for you, because I don't disagree with you, but I don't know how the world could possibly have done this, but it almost feels like that would have been a better second arc than Gugu, and Gugu being a climatic finisher arc.
I
which
was
is a
thinking
delivery
the
thing,
same.
So that
and not a character thing.
and that is actually something that I considered, but the thing about that though is you have to look at the character progression, because the 5-year jump that you essentially had with Gugu is essentially the jump where Fushi learns how to be just a regular person.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
couldn't figure out how
so-
to do it either. The same reason.
And so the other thing is that I do think that the Gugu arc does a massive disservice to the third arc, because what it does is that you have just received this massive emotional trauma, and you're essentially trying to recover from that in this third arc. And so it almost doesn't matter what the third arc is,
Very true.
because of what you just went through in the Gugu arc. You need time to recover.
Yep.
Yes. And maybe that's why maybe they were trying to have the third arc be that recovery period. Maybe they were trying, and that's why it felt different and weaker. But I agree with you, Skyler. It would be so hard for them to follow up anything after the Gugu arc. Like, truly, it is.
Yes.
So during our anime club discussion, everyone went through, and as they were talking about it, the majority of people said that the Gugu arc is their like favorite arc of any anime they've seen. Like, if you take like an individual arc of story, and it's, for me, it's up there like top 3. So anything after it would have been disappointing, I
Yes.
believe. But
So
yes,
here's-
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Again, I'm saying it's a delivery thing. They should have cut that stinking arc out and put it somewhere else in a different season.
Correct, but it does affect the characters, because even there they still messed up on the characters.
And I
so the-
think-
Okay, well, let's talk about
Go ahead.
characters
yeah,
then,
yeah.
because
So
again,
moving on,
yes,
Yeah.
I'm intentionally not getting to Gugi yet, because obviously putting him for later.
Gosh.
Exactly. Piorin. I want to jump into Piorin for a little bit. She's another person that kind of falls in the same boat, because at first, it is kind of revealed early that she's a criminal, but it wasn't really given as to why or how she was the criminal.
Right.
And so it kind of allowed that initial bonding, which was fine.
Oh,
But then you find out that she's just murdered a bunch of people. And then it's just like, oh, suddenly I care for you a lot less.
I mean, I
So-
don't know. By that point, I'd already been pretty enamored with the characters. Like, I want to understand why she murdered those people. I want to understand like why she did that, because she seems to have such a strong character core that I wanted to connect with.
Did they ever go into that?
I think they did. I think they mentioned it maybe in the last episode someplace, or because that's when Sneakin' Fushi doesn't want to like go back to Piorin, because he feels he's just gonna kill her with the knockers eventually. But so I swear it gets explored somehow. That's when he brings up like she killed 11 people, but like I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe it never gets explored. Maybe it never gets said.
Yeah. So because of that, Piorin is actually a very interesting character, because I would say that actually did her really well. Because you have this essentially roller coaster of emotions where it's like you get to care for her, and now you suddenly don't care for her, and then you kind of care for her because she's literally on the deathbed. And so she's a
also-
very interesting character that way.
For a nomination of a character I never thought would be a main function of the story is Piorin, who was the fake
Yeah.
shaman in the first, like the episode 2 and 3 or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that character, really? Okay.
Yeah. That being said, I think if I'm looking at our rubric for Piorin, like, as far as being understandable, consistent, reasonable, relatable, yeah, often, but to Skyler, to your point, also sometimes, yeah, and also a little convenient in her proximity to Fushi at critical times too.
Yep.
True. I don't remember if she ends up doing much besides like teaching him, but yeah, she's always somehow around him for sure.
So could I throw out a number here and see what we're thinking? Because
Go for
here's
it.
and
Possibly.
the reason I'm throwing out a number is I'll give an explanation first. So we've talked a lot about characters that we think fall short, and I think it's because we could all probably collectively agree really quickly that the other characters are really, really good characters. Like, phenomenal characters. Like, they're understandable, consistent, they're reasonable, they're dynamic or static when they need to be. They're relatable. We're talking about March, Perona, Jean, Fushi, even the bear had like good emotional tie-in. The Beholder, Hayase, the Knockers, Reen, Shin, Gugu.
I wanted to talk about the Beholder because he's interesting.
Okay, let me give the number and then we'll see.
Okay.
Like let's talk about the Beholder more. So I'm proposing that if those characters are up of the 5 range, but these other characters are lower, that maybe we do another 4.5 or a 4.
I kind of ache a bit because like I was trying to get into. I mean, it's hard because I think this arc 3 characters are still really good, just ill placed in this show at that time.
Are they always? Let's use our rubric. Are they always understandable, consistent, reasonable, static, dynamic, and relatable?
Understandable, no. I think I would say they are consistent with themselves, though. Like when we
I'd say so.
Understand why they want to be a pirate band or why they group together, their backstories are just a bundle of like, oh yeah, okay, and you're that part, and oh
Yeah, that's true.
oh geez, okay. I mean, all right.
That's true.
I think specifically of the little one, Sigan Upa, whose dad was like a librarian and mom like died and his dad was like blamed for killing his mom.
Yeah.
They get sent to Prison Island and her dad like ends up really enjoying murdering people in the Coliseum and Upa like disowns her dad because of that. I'm like, oh, you know what? That's not bad, honestly.
Yeah.
But they're just
true.
ill placed, which I don't like. Is that something we can dock them for in this section? Or is that again a weird cut thing? Or or because they're bad characters maybe for this anime, does that make them bad characters? I think so, actually. I think that's a true statement. It's because they're not well placed for this show. They probably aren't good characters in this show's rating. It's just an interesting thing. I've not really encountered this before.
I do think I am looking at the rubric and looking over at the list of the characters, and I think, is this character understandable, consistent, reasonable, relatable? I'm saying yes the majority of the time. There are... Yeah, I don't know. I see what you're saying, Braydn.
Yeah.
Skyler, what are you thinking?
So yeah, the delivery did not do the characters any favors. And unfortunately, that also does affect their
for our
consistency.
problem characters, because there's a lot of good stuff otherwise.
Yeah. For the problem characters.
Yeah.
But for the good characters, they're just normal good. Gugu is the standout for me as exceptional because he is a pity character that they did not treat like a pity character. And the way that they handled Gugu is a very, very interesting and fresh take on that type of character.
I want to also toss that the take, yes, agreed. And more on our main character, on our main side characters. I do think that the take on your side characters having the indomitable shonen spirit and then killing them makes for a good character setup that is that lend to the emotional impact that we love about this show. So that's
So what are we thinking?
So yeah, I would ballpark 4 to 4.5.
I don't think it can get a 5. I think our rubric might not be able to identify that problem I showed up with, but I think that's enough to say they didn't fit for what this show had. So 4.5.
Okay, 4.5. We good with that?
Ooh, it's
Good?
there's some juicy stuff there, but yeah, I think that's all I have for tonight. That's all I could invest
Okay.
into this discussion for tonight.
Okay, and we didn't really get to dive into some of the things I wanted to dive into because we're getting short on time. Like I wanted us to talk more about Hayase, the
Crazy.
The
the-
crazy
the
maniac.
crazy maniac character.
She
that came,
is a very good villain and very politically involved and very motivated to just do the worst murder I've ever heard.
and
Boy.
I was very upset when she first came back. Like, oh great, she's back. But then when she started like getting
Acting?
involved in the world and acting, and I was like, whoa, this, whoo, dang, she's something else. There was still kind of some of the like annoyance of how she entered in the final scene, the
Yes.
final arc. But anyway, okay. So we landed on 4.5 for characters. Let's get into the delivery. Delivery includes translation, voice acting, script, edit.
Okay. And that's where I jump in. Our terrible one deliveries, or where the delivery is frequently cheesy, inappropriate, incoherent, and bland. While exceptional deliveries are always believable, genuine, understandable, elevating, and enriching.
Skyler, do you want to kick us off?
Man.
Yeah, so we kind of addressed some things earlier about just the position of the third arc, and the suggestion I actually have for that is replace the third arc with Pioran. With that whole wind down thing.
With the old lady.
Uh-huh.
Maybe
Because
spend a little bit more time there or something.
it gives you enough time to recover. Like, sure, you're still losing a character.
But she
But it
didn't add
gives-
anything in the third arc anyway.
And that's my whole point.
Yeah.
Is that she
Yeah.
really didn't add anything anyways. If you want contrived situations, you can contrive some other situation to keep them on the arc, like a better introduction to the pirates, to the pirate band.
Mm-hmm.
And that would fix some of those problems that they had there. And so that would be an edit change that I would do, is just rearranging those arcs.
That's actually a really good idea. I think that would have done a lot for the. Yeah.
And then you might have actually cared about the pirate crew more.
Interesting.
We
Yeah.
For
we
example-
needed some space. That's one of the things that drove my personal enjoyment down. Is that space wasn't really given to me to like mourn or process those characters. And so I felt I said abusive in my opening statement. Like, just quit trying to push the sad button. Give me some space, all right?
Yeah.
Let it breathe a little bit.
And honestly, like with that, like literally watching Fushi go through the grieving process with Pioran while you're going through the grieving process for Gugu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
So-
at that point though, like I love the idea, but the one thing that's giving me pause is like Fushi just had the loss with Gugu to then go right into the loss with Pioran. Like that would have felt like
Well,
a
What if
lot
That's this whole
back
show.
to back.
What if we
That's this whole
spent-
show?
what if we spent like 3 episodes there though instead of 1?
Yeah, true.
Like that
Yeah, true.
conversation and that how that could have conversed could have been spent there with this hole that we're creating by removing the pirate arc or the whatever island arc. it's called.
Shortening the island arc and making the
Little bit more
Pioran one
space.
for that'd be really interesting.
So there's a duck there. I think there's a duck there.
Yep.
We can note that and talk about some other stuff. Because I listened the second time through. I listened to it in English.
Oh, how was it?
The whole way through. It was mostly fine. Standout characters were Gugu, because he's involved in a lot of things that I love. He actually does this character better than I think he does another character that I love. He does Inosuke, the boar-headed guy in Demon Slayer. And I don't like how he did that one, but I do really like how he did Gugu here. I think he pulled up the child growing character here pretty well.
Cool.
Otherwise, fairly unnotable. It was a dub. It was on the side. It was easy to listen to. Nothing outstanding to note here.
I think everything else about this was what I would expect from a good show.
Yep.
I might say the script hit a bit better than other shows.
True. No, that's true. No, that's actually true. There were some really good moments. Really good moments in the script specifically. No, I
Well,
agree with that.
Like I love. Sorry, go ahead, Skyler. I'll go.
Well, I would say, yeah, there are a couple standout script moments, and there are also a few standout voice acting moments.
Okay. Well,
But
I want to
the
touch on script really
majority
quick.
are normal.
Script really quick. March, the child character. I love how her translation was like provided to us. Like her character came through with the choice of words of saying, "Oh, I want to be a mother," right?
Mm-hmm.
Or her voice now is not only provided by us by the voice acting character, but also the words she was given to say made a big impact of identifying a child character more than just
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just giving a child character some like, please do this, Mr.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Skyler, what were you gonna say? Because I think I'm gonna say the same thing.
Well, about the voice acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few standout voice acting moments, but the rest were normal and what you would expect, or what I would expect.
What are those moments?
So obviously Gugu
Mm-hmm.
in that last episode, especially, I think.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the kiss in that episode.
I know, the kiss is what I was thinking about. God.
Can I add in Skyler to the voice acting piece? Fushi's voice actor, and the script for Fushi, because Fushi was learning Japanese, and you heard him breaking up words. Like, I think that part of the script and the voice acting was super good. Like, really good. Skylar and I are both trying to learn Japanese. And anyway, as a side note, and
Actually,
man, that was actually standout.
Marsh did a bit with that too, where she was teaching Fushi how to say arigato. And she spells out every part of the syllable, including the last little ooh that everybody forgets about. And I'm like, ooh, yes, good. I am learning a thing right there. I'm learning a thing.
That was really good. In fact, that alone, that piece alone, I think is a big plus for the delivery of the show, for sure.
But when you like hold it against the whole from the edit, does it kind of just balance back to normal?
I think it does, which means where does that put us, Braydn?
That puts us at like a 3, doesn't it?
I think it does.
Yeah.
Because like there's some good moments and there's some bad moments, and it's polarizing, but not in extremes. Like there's some shows like Gurren Lagann that extreme to like, oh, there's a 5 over here and it's a bloody 1 over here.
Yeah.
But this is not as polarizing. It's good and fairly normal and has some good stuff. Like we also want to note maybe even the good transition between arc 1 and arc 2 was immaculate.
Yeah, so good.
But it's not anything more, I don't know, anything more that I really want to dish in Thor. So yeah, we're going to land on a 3 for this one.
I will let the massive biome change slide, but oh well.
Yeah, he walks
snow
in.
tundra into tropical jungle.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, that's a little bit quick too. That's more story than delivery, though, I think.
Well, and like I said, I'm willing to let that one slide.
Yeah.
So what that means is that for our technical ranking, we've got 3, 4.5, 4.53, giving us a total of 7.5. So 7.5, where's that put us, Braydn?
Pretty stinking average for the shows on our show. Like for the stuff that we review, I think 7.25 is our most reviewed anime on our technical standpoint.
7.25 has Grimgar, has another 7.5 is Mob Psycho.
Yeah.
7.75 is Haikyuu.
Which, I mean, again, kudos to Steins Gate to Your Eternity for being just far and beyond these shows. Like we hash out all this time to come up with a score that's like a little bit deviant from the other ones we have. Like our last one we reviewed, sticking Ranking of Kings as our second worst show we've ever reviewed, but it's only 1 point off from this one, I think.
Yeah, and technically, yeah.
Technically scored.
Okay, so that is To Your Eternity. If you enjoyed To Your Eternity, or if you just want another good show, what do we recommend?
Hmm.
Who wants to give the recommend? We're gonna go around a circle, and we're each gonna do one recommendation after the next. Who wants to start? Skyler?
I will start off. I brought this up earlier. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yes,
That story is so good.
it really
And
is.
impactful with like their
yeah.
moments of death too. They do not shy away. We said that in our episode on Sneaking Tasty Ranking of Kings as well. Good, like we said, Brotherhood specifically for good deaths, not Ranking of Kings. Sorry.
So that's Brotherhood. Thank you, Skyler. Braydn, what's the recommendation you got?
I'm gonna toss in ReZero, Starting Life in Another World. Because that boy also gets hecka murdered over and over and over again. And it brings up some really good, interesting conversations. Fantasy world, much more magic leaning, yet also with good conversations between characters. In fact, one that I think in this show was between Gugu and the girl. I can't remember her name. I got the page dismissed already. Rhea, I think.
Reen.
Reen. Was also pretty on par with some of my favorite moments between. Oh no, I can't remember. Does she even exist? I don't remember her name. What is her? I'm just kidding. There's some good conversations in ReZero.
You little...
Oh, he did the joke. He
Hey.
did the joke. Okay, I'll give a recommendation. If you want something that also has a great story, wonderful characters, but is less emotionally jarring, but still really good, Avatar: The Last Airbender. A lot of people don't consider it anime. It's a really good show. If you haven't seen it, I'd really go watch it. And then I'll give another recommendation before we go around the horn again. If you want another show that also has romance, a lot of romance in it, it's actually primarily a romance. If you liked that part of this show and you also really liked being punched in the gut, watch Your Lie in April.
Ooh, that's different. Sad, Brett. That's dangerous.
I know, I'm just saying, if you like the emotional part of it,
Mix that pot a little bit.
get in. Yeah.
Very emotional.
All right. Braydn, what's your next one?
I have a weak one. I think that's gonna be my last recommendation for tonight. Parasite.
Ah,
Oh.
I know we don't talk about too much, but I think does do some real impactful, strange things with identity, with learning and growing about our place in the world, with him learning his place as a parasite human hybrid in his world, and also very more egregious bites of vor. It's not, again, a strong recommendation, but I do recommend it as an anime. It's quite a watch to take,
cool.
especially on the
Skyler.
darker side. Yeah.
So that actually kind of brought one to mind. So if you like the whole adventure and just like exploring different like cultures and ways of doing things, Kino's Journey, The Beautiful World.
I was gonna say that.
Oh, mind meld. Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's a very interesting anime where you're essentially following this person as they just travel through these like mini countries, and all of these countries have very different ways of doing things.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I have
It's,
not seen that.
it's a very episodic, like
Very.
self-contained story in one episode, and it's a very philosophical anime. Like, what if murder was legal? Or what if a city was mobile? Like, what impact would it have on the environment? And what politics would it cause? Like, it's a very philosophical show.
How is there a Twilight Zone anime that I have not seen yet? Hold up. Okay, that's on my list. But this is one called again?
Kino's Journey, and as a bonus, the motorcycle talks.
Oh. Kino's Journey. Perfect.
All right, I will give one more as well. Okay, so the next one I will give is Beastars. So this is a Netflix anime. The reason I'm gonna give Beastars is because there's a romance aspect to it. There's some also very like make you think. Like, this show really makes you think about relationships and how people evolve over time and learning, and like, are you making the most of your time, and some really good things. Beastars makes you think about a lot of different things in a different way. Like, you're putting on a whole different set of glasses when you watch this show. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's also a really good show. There is, again, some mature content in Beastars, and some of it may be more triggering to people than others, depending on certain ways you feel about certain things. But that's all I can say without giving any spoilers. So
we'll do those spoilers in another episode. You bet you will.
there's our recommendations. Next time, join us, because we are going to be covering, holy cow, our list is full of bonus episodes. Let me throw out a couple notes for all of you. So with the anime season kicking off, or the spring season, there's a lot of good shows that we want to be covering. So you may or may not have already heard our episodes on things like Rise of the Shield Hero, Kaguya-sama, Spy Family. Lots of good stuff. We're going to be covering the new SAO movie when it comes out. So we interject our bonus episodes into our regularly scheduled programming. But the next regularly scheduled show that we will be releasing is ReZero, Starting Life in Another World. So get hyped for that one. That's all we have for you today. Thank you so much again for coming, for watching, for joining us in the discussion. Leave some comments and check us out on 310anime.com, 310anime.com. You can find our ranking rubrics, our personal enjoyment tables. You can get links to all of our social media. Go check us out online. And again, thank you for listening. Until next time, Jeanne.
Good night, everybody.
See ya.
君が好きだ